Welcome to MojoPlays. Today, we're looking at 10 things cut from Cyberpunk 2077.
You forgot your guitar!
No, I didn't.
What do you want to see restored in a future update? Special thanks to YouTubers Tyler McVicker and Deconstructing the Game for investigating Cyberpunk's missing features and providing a lot of information.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Street vendors.
Every street vendor that looks like they're supposed to be selling things are actually selling things. They're actually vendors.
Tyler McVicker took it upon himself in mid-2021 to try and load the version of Cyberpunk that was printed on the game discs, when CDPR triumphantly declared the disc had gone gold in October 2020. He did this by disconnecting his PlayStation from the internet and installing the game directly from the disc, which let him see and explore this earlier build.
The player has the ability to inspect every 3D model for each of the items in their inventory.
One of the most surprising things he discovered, which was cut ahead of release, were the street vendors. In this gold version, V could encounter small street vendors all around the world who would sell a selection of consumable items. For some reason, these were cut. It's not a major removal, but it does raise many questions, and modders have since restored the street vendors on PC. Flying cars.
Please provide your destination.
Destination, Lizzie's Bar.
Noted. En route.
Ever since Blade Runner, flying cars have been a staple of science fiction, but especially of Cyberpunk. That's why it's so disappointing when we learn Cyberpunk 2077 contains no drivable flying cars. Sure, you might see flying cars around, and V does briefly ride in a flying car during the Corpo prologue, but you don't get to drive any. We found this out with a CDPR interview way back in 2018, but it still stings, especially when we can see the cars flying around, but we can't use a single flying vehicle in-game. This is in stark contrast to every other open world game, with GTA and Saints Row featuring planes and helicopters for years. Apartments. Interestingly, it seems that at one point Cyberpunk was going to feature some kind of real estate system where V would be able to buy and move into bigger, better apartments as the game goes on. Presumably this would have worked like the extremely annoying car buying system, but for whatever reason it was too difficult to implement.
I think I might have caught something when I jacked into that Corpo's biomon. Dunno, neurovirus or...
V does have apartment-based progression in some ways, as you unlock other people's apartments as pseudo-home bases as you befriend them, but only V's first apartment remains the true one. Though, in one of the endings, you do get to see the interior of an enormous, non-purchasable McMansion. Wall running. Something else conspicuously missing from the launch game that we saw throughout pre-release material was the ability to wall run. In that 40-minute gameplay demo that showed the majority of the early Militech and Maelstrom mission where you acquire the Flathead, we also saw V perform some wall running.
Alright, time to show off our new high-level abilities.
Yes, we know there was an indicator on screen the entire time warning us that things might change, but it's still sad that wall running was cut ahead of release, as it would have definitely added some welcome variety to the combat. Thankfully, this particular mechanic has been restored through a mod, as one fan managed to solve the quote design problems that led to CDPR removing it. Train system.
And it's evident that this is a proper metro station stop because the station is right beside the track.
We saw V on what looks like a subway car in one of the early cinematics, and many players will have spotted a monorail. But though the monorail exists and drives around the map, you cannot ride it. Well, unless you climb on top of it, but that doesn't count. People have also found partly completed train tunnels underneath eastern portions of the map, including train sound effects. Obviously, at some point the trains were cut out of the finished game. It's not the end of the world as Night City is overflowing with fast travel points, but it would have been a nice quality of life addition. After all, you never needed to take the train in GTA 4, but it was nice to have it there adding color to the world. Customization.
Also, you can use an array of different options to modify how you look. These include body type, hairstyle, tattoos, makeup, skin tone, and many, many more.
Before release, everybody was dying to know just how customizable Cyberpunk 2077 was going to be. But beyond the character creation menu, you actually can't customize all that much. You can't even customize V's car or weapons. This is odd because other characters in the game do have unique custom versions of many weapons, and the game does have a crafting system, but it won't allow you to reskin a gun to look cooler. We only found out that car customization wouldn't make the final cut in summer 2020, with all the cars V can possess instead being designed ahead of time. Yet again though, modders have plugged this hole and restored the customization features.
That means that the car that you like at the press of a button can be changed to the style and color you prefer.
Backstories.
Well, who do we have here? Grew up in Haywood. Whole street was my family.
The life paths sounded great at first, but upon playing the game, they were a resounding disappointment. The different prologues were cool, but sadly much too short, coming in at just 30 minutes if you take your time. But it wasn't always meant to be this way. The life path system actually replaced a different backstory system that would have seen you give V a much more unique origin. This was shown off in some early gameplay footage.
This is an RPG, so before we get into our appearance, we need to define our backstory. What you choose here will unlock different possibilities later in the game.
You could select V's childhood hero, a key life event that defines them, and why they're going to Night City. It would have been much more akin to the small changes you could make to Shepard's backstory at the beginning of Mass Effect than the streamlined life path system we originally got, though some prefer the backstories were cut.
Work for yourself, live for yourself. That's the only way.
NPC routines.
Silverhand's debut album, that. Down hill ever since, if you ask me.
Ahead of release, we were told that over 1,000 of Night City's NPCs were going to have their own routines and schedules that they'd follow. This was something Rockstar had already implemented in Red Dead 2, but of course, Red Dead 2 has far fewer NPCs to program unique routines into than Night City. That's probably the reason NPC routines were ultimately ditched. In fact, NPCs barely even have AI. They'll just wander around aimlessly and do nothing in particular most of the time.
I can't make it!
Hello.
Sometimes the entire crowd will despawn and respawn when they're called, completely shattering your immersion. It's likely that this was simply too ambitious for the game to pull off.
Got a smoke?
Who are you? Business as usual.
Hey, friend. You good?
Cut districts.
We've seen in previous exploration videos that there's nothing contained within, and there's areas like train stations and doors that look like they're meant to be stance entrances to the main arena, but there's nothing inside.
Numerous regions have been cut out of the main game, as plenty of fans have discovered in their exploration of the map. The YouTube channel Deconstructing the Game posted a video comparing the in-game map to the physical map that shipped with the disc, with the latter showing areas that don't appear in-game.
That means an entire chunk of playable area was removed from the game after they'd committed to the city's design.
There are other areas too, like a huge corporate town, as the Redditor who discovered it called it, the spaceport that sits in the distance and never features in a mission, and the Arasaka waterfront. Night City is a pretty huge map already, but it's still sad to see just how much bigger it could have been.
This becomes even more interesting when we notice that this straight line would take us right through the old location of Charter Hill.
Third-person cutscenes.
To let it all go now. Why?
Cleanest, least bloody option.
The lack of third-person view was many people's biggest potential gripe with the game ahead of its release. But the blow was somewhat softened by CDPR seemingly implying that V would be visible in third person in some cutscenes, much like Fallout 4. However, this turned out to not be the case at all.
You forgot your guitar!
No, I didn't.
Cyberpunk 2077 has third-person cutscenes in some of the game's endings, but the rest of the time, you only see your version of V when driving or while looking at how stupid your gear is in the inventory menu. CDPR backpedaled on how much would be third-person numerous times, and now it's been left to modders to restore third-person view to the people who prefer it.
Do you agree with our picks? Don't forget to stick around and check out our other videos on MojoPlays.